Okay. We're very fortunate at Russell Sage to host Saki Mafundikwa, who comes to us direct from Harare, Zimbabwe. Saki Mafundikwa is the founder and director of the Zimbabwe Institute of Vigital Arts, or ZIVA. ZIVA in the Shona language means to know, and ZIVA is a design and new media training college in Harare. Professor Mafundikwa was educated at Yale University, where he received an MFA in graphic design. Following his education, he worked in New York City as a graphic designer for Random House, Fodor, Cooper Union, among others. He returned to Zimbabwe in 1998 to found ZIVA and continue his design work and philological scholarship. In 2007, he published Afrikan Alphabets, the story of writing in Africa. With a Pan-African approach, this study was the first to comparatively analyze the continent's writing systems in terms of design, semantics, and typography. Afrikan Alphabets is distinguished both for its scholarship and its clear, beautiful design. It is my personal go-to book, and I owe a great debt to Professor Mafundikwa's scholarship and design brilliance. Professor Mafundikwa is also a filmmaker. His film, Shungu, Resistance of a People, premiered at the International Documentary Film Festival in Amsterdam. Mafundikwa is a sought-after speaker on the international lecture circuit. His TED Talks are available online, and he was the keynote speaker at 2019 Pan-African Design Institute Conference in Ghana. He is also a farmer, so he feeds both mind and body. We are quite fortunate to have him with us today. Let us welcome him.
Thank you, Dr. Davis, for that introduction. Hello, Russell Sage. I'm very happy to be here. For me, it's evening, although it's an hour earlier than this talk was supposed to be because of daylight savings. I'm now 6 hours ahead of you instead of 7, so we have picked up an hour there. I'm going to share my screen so that I can start my talk. Right, so here we are. Okay. As Dr. Davis said, I am a graphic designer, design thinker, educator, author, filmmaker, storyteller. I prefer storytelling than filmmaking, and a farmer, which I'm proud of. And so this is where Zimbabwe is on the continent of Africa. We are landlocked, almost in the middle in Southern Africa. And it's our summer now. Today, I think it marks at 81 degrees. I don't want to rub anything in, but it's quite warm and beautiful. And the country, Zimbabwe, is named after this which was built between the 11th and 15th century. And at its height, it was home to about 20,000 people. There was a king there who lived there. And it is a World Heritage Site because it's a design, engineering, and architectural wonder in that the structure stands without any mortar, right? So the the boulders, the blocks here, the granite blocks, right, stand, they're freestanding without any mortar. And I think the ingenuity here is that it tapers as it goes up, which is why it can withstand the weight and the test of time. Here's my son here, Teacher Kunda, in front of the in the great enclosure, just to give you perspective on how high it is. And Zimbabwe also is well known for its stone sculpture. They say of the 10 top stone sculptures in the world, 5 of them come from my country. So in a way, because Zimbabwe means houses made of stone, I think stone, and then we are very good at stone sculpture. I think that stone is kind of like ingrained in our DNA. This is Harare. This is the capital. This is my home. And we are looking at the what's called the Afrika Unity Square. It's our central park. And this is between September and October, which is our spring, when the jacaranda trees are in full bloom. So, Line, Shape, and Space, which is an Autodesk publication, did a feature on me and my philosophy of looking within, you know, designing from within. And this is the clarion call to African designers throughout the continent, because there's a tendency to look outside, especially to the west or the north, where we think that the best design comes from at the expense of African design. And so I went back home in 1998, and February 1999, 1st of February, I opened the school that I called Zimbabwe Institute of Vigital Arts, or ZIVA. Basically, the Vigital comes from visual arts taught using digital tools. And that, I think, grew out of my being in New York City in the 90s, when things digital were born, multimedia, you know, the World Wide Web. And I was there when it all happened. And I felt like, okay, now the time is right to move back home to start a design school. The dream was always there. And I show you this detail here. It's from the wall at the Great Zimbabwe. And you see these chevron shapes. They were the inspiration for the logo. And this is where it all began. I found this house, and the address is 123A Nelson Mandela Avenue. And I was like, oh my God, well, this is the price. I mean, this is the address to kill for, you know, and that's where ZIVA was born. And this guy here, I want you to remember his face. He is the first student on the 1st of February that walked through the doors, and only one student. And it really blew my life in New York, and to come home and get one student. But at the end of the week, 2 others had joined, and by the end of the month, they were 4, and it kept growing, as you can see here. And basically, well, I was quite old school because of the education that I got. And as you can see here, drawing was a big part of the curriculum. We used to believe that design came from the French, which means to draw. So drawing was a very big part of the curriculum. And then also the new media part, digital video. And I was lucky enough to get support, international support, in the form of designers who wanted to come to help at ZIVA. And the first was Jennifer Sonderby. She's from San Francisco. She came and spent 2 weeks working with the students. And then after that, Sherry Blankenship, also from the US, Ohio, and she came and helped us as well. And ZIVA kept growing, you know, and Bertzi Berger and Thomas Tucker came from Yale University in Dubai. They had heard me talk at a conference in Qatar, in Doha, and they volunteered to come and run workshops. Betsy did a book design workshop, and Thomas Tucker did a Maya workshop. And over the years, other design luminaries came also to run workshops. Here's Gert Gramlich. Some of you might know him. He's from Heidelberg in Germany, a very, very talented, very, very good designer. Fierce, in fact, poster designer. And he was part of an initiative by Poster for Tomorrow from Paris. And the theme for that year was education is a right. And so ZIVA kept growing in numbers, students. And of course, the happiest time is always graduation. Our program is a 2-year diploma program. And I think at the end of 2 years, our students are equipped to go into the field, into the world, as to practice as designers. This is the first work that our students did. We were invited by a school in Paris to this international initiative for the Summer Games in Sydney, in Australia. And the theme was human rights and the games. And our work was picked, and we received special mention because we didn't use computers for the work. The only school that didn't use computers. This was in 2000. And this is my passion, this class here that I teach when my students are freshmen, the first semester, basically, when they don't know anything about type. And the brief is design an alphabet inspired by nature. And these are some of the designs by the students. And I must add here that the function, the reason why I give this project is that the students don't know anything about typography. They don't know what a font is. They don't know what kerning is. And also for them to get an appreciation of just like the complexity of letter forms. Because when they look at the printed word, they just think, well, it's just letters. With letter forms. This is expressive typography. This is after now they have learned, they have figured out typography, the Roman alphabet. These are the posters from the Poster for Tomorrow, the Education is a Right workshop with Gert Gramlich. It was a 3-day workshop. So, of course, they design identity, logos, and identity programs. The one on the right in Sewa Wellness Center, this was a World Food Program, and TNT. TNT are the Dutch couriers. They're like the DHL or FedEx of the Netherlands. And the initiative was for long distance truck drivers who on the road, you know, they are away from their families for a long, long time, plying the routes from the south to the north of Africa. And they are affected by the HIV pandemic. So these wellness centers are placed at border posts between the countries, and they can access these centers for resources like medication, information, and so forth. And we did the whole identity program. Oh, sorry, going back. And Harare City Library came calling. They wanted a logo. And this was the winning logo and the logo that's used at the library today. We also do infographics, which I think, as you know, are quite an important part of any design education today. I'm going to share with you something that my students didn't do, but this is something quite important in terms of typography in Zimbabwe. So when I got back home from a 20-year stay in America, I found that every weekend there are these posters that are plastered all over town of musical events happening around the city. And I really liked, they're all handmade, all hand silk screened. And I went looking for the people who did these and found these guys. And basically it's like 4 or 5 guys in a room. So you have the letterer who letters and then cuts stencil. And then the stencil is pasted on the back of the screen, and voila, you get the posters. And so John Walters at I Magazine in London, he's always looking for stories from Africa, and he got in touch with me. And I did a story on these guys. Basically, they in this image here, they were in a space that they were using that belonged to the city, but they were kicked out, and they ended up on the streets basically. And this became the studio. Is old trucks, so neither rain nor sleet could stop them. And it was great to work on this story also. My interests are not only African. I really like writing systems from non-Western societies, especially things like Hangul of Korea. This was because when I taught at Cooper Union, one of my first students in my first class was from Korea, and she told me about how John did a writing system in 1446 in reaction to Koreans being forced to use Chinese writing. And then I discovered that in America, the Cherokee have a script called Cherokee script. It was invented by Sequoyah in 1806. And what I really like about the script is like Sequoyah was sort of quote unquote illiterate in terms of the Roman alphabet. So he just took characters he liked and gave them meanings in Cherokee. and there was a level of high literacy among the Cherokee, reading and writing Cherokee. So this is an example of usage in Oklahoma. So the student that I talked about, who told me about Hangul, in that class, they were supposed to do research on a writing system and then design a book and create the book themselves. But she did a cube because apparently Hangul, which is considered to be one of the most scientific alphabets in the world, is based on a matrix of geometric shapes. So this was her quote unquote book, and I really liked that. This is an alphabet designed by a student from Thailand. She called it, he called it Hum, H-U-M. And the Dreamings, the Aborigines of Australia, right in the sand, they draw these symbols in the sand that they call the Dreamings. And I like how the student designed the book or created the book. So you have because usually they're out there in the desert. And so you have this white space where the symbols are and the text explaining everything around here. It's like the horizon line. Sanskrit out of India. It's another script I quite like. And then I've run workshops around the world. This was in Turin in 2006, 2008, not so sure. But this was on the occasion of Turin being designated a world design capital. And this was an EcoGrada workshop, students from all over the world. And so we designed typefaces. So first, of course, you pick a word, and since multiversal was the theme of this workshop, of the conference rather, we start with that, and then from there develop the full alphabets. Then last year, just in February, I went to Johannesburg in South Africa and worked with the students there to design alphabets as well. This student's sister was battling breast cancer, and so she calls this the cancer alphabet. And this one student has ancestry in India, so henna paintings. And then this one was a dancer, and she said that, well, dancing is a whole world, and she put on a tutu and posed the whole alphabet, basically. And the heart, love, from the heart. Then I moved to Seattle in 2017, and just before Trump was inaugurated, and people were dealing with Standing Rock and other issues. So in my social responsibility class, we did these posters basically around Trump. And this is a Vietnamese father and his son who was born in Seattle. You see that tower, and how he left Hanoi on American helicopters when Hanoi fell. And this one here is from Mexico. She's a DACA kid who faced deportation back to Mexico. And so this is about the war. And then in 2018, it was 70 years of the Declaration of Human Rights. And so we gave the students this project, like 70 years on, did the human rights, I mean, that declaration, was it still pertinent to today's world? And students had different issues. Movement, of course, curtailed by Trump. Homelessness in Seattle, one of the highest rates of homelessness in a city that's considered to be one of the wealthiest, not only in America, but in the world. The slavery, modern slavery, is an issue that a lot of people are not aware of, but there is, it's a very big problem globally. This is now, you know, the internment of the Japanese, and this suitcase, this student, this suitcase is the one that her grandparents used or took with them when they went to those camps. And of course, if you live in Seattle, you know about the Spheres and Jeff Bezos. And this was the class at the opening of the show of the human rights show. And then I took this show to Binghamton, which I'm sure you are aware of. And they also were interested in doing the human rights, the 70 years of human rights. And 2 Chinese students asked me if they could do their projects in Chinese. And I was like, yeah, why not? And so this is the posters they did. This one was done by someone who's not a student, actually, but she worked for the university, and she's from Latin America. And the issue was movement, how movement has been curtailed, actually. And then in 2013, I was invited by TED to speak at their 2013 talks in Long Beach in California. And basically, they invited me and also on ZIVA, how I went back home to start a school there. But the untold story, which I'm only starting to tell now, is the story of how Alvin Eisenman, who was the founder of the graphic design department at the Yale School of Art and the head of the department, interviewed me for admission into the program, the master's program. And he asked me a simple question: where are you from? Zimbabwe. What language do you speak? Shona. Well, is it written? And I was like, what kind of question is that? Of course it's written. I was like, what are the characters like? And I'm like, Roman alphabet, of course. And he was quite disappointed. And he said, I know, I've heard that there are African societies that have devised their own writing systems. I thought yours might be, your people might be one of those people. And I thought, wow, I'd never heard of that. And I was like, okay, if I get in, it's going to be my thesis. So I got in, and it became my thesis. And my reader was Paul Rand. I'm sure you've heard of him. And this is these are his notes for when he read my thesis. Okay, and you can tell here what's going on. It's like when he talks about comparisons of African symbols with the work of Picasso and Klee, modernist, total, I mean hardcore. If you didn't talk about Picasso, well, your work wasn't worth anything. And I show this picture here of me and my classmates at Yale. because of this man here. This is Alvin Eisenman at the back, but this man in front here, this is Bradbury Thompson. And Bradbury Thompson stands as, for me, the instructor, the teacher, you know, that I remember, that who's basically empathy. I learned empathy. Today as a teacher myself, empathy is a very big part of my practice, my method, you know, and I learned that from Bradbury Thompson. And some of you know the West Vaco series that he did. And when I saw this work, I just saw Africa right here, this mask, you know, and I was like, oh my God. And at this point, right, you know, Yale University was Swiss. Everything was just Swiss. So Africa was not even part of the narrative. So when I saw this, it really ignited something within me that Africa could have something to offer to design. So my book deals with different writing systems. Like this is called proto-writing, the Nsibidi from Nigeria. And when slaves were taken to the New World, Nsibidi became the writing system used by practitioners of voodoo in Haiti, Santeria in Cuba, and Candomblé in Brazil. And it's alive and well today. But this writing is not for everybody. This is for initiates of the religious movements. Adinkra symbols, very important, from Ghana and Cote d'Ivoire. These are proverbs or sayings. Like for instance, my favorite Adinkra is Sankofa, which is return to the past, go and get it and learn from the past. And since Africa's greatness is in our past, this Adinkra symbol has a lot of meaning for me. This is a Kuba cloth from the Congo. Bark cloth by the Mbuti people of the and the Luba people invented the Lukasa, which is basically, for me, to me, it's like the first tablet. It came from Africa. And this man here, King Ibrahim Joya of the Bamum Kingdom, Cameroon, invented a writing system, the Bamum syllabary. And here it is. So it is said manuscripts and books are kept, and it's actually it's relief printing. So when they say printed, he invented a printing press. It was relief printing. Bantu symbol writing from South Africa. The house painting of the Ndebele people from South Africa. It is a skill that is taught. It's only done by women, and it's taught to young girls when they are quite small, and they gain proficiency as they grow up. And British Airways had this identity program where they got the artwork from different parts of the world, and Ndebele was one of them. And you can see there's Japan there. And the queen of this art form is Esther. She's now a doctor, Dr. Esther Masango. She has started a school of design in South Africa to teach young girls this skill. And there were syllabaries, also writing systems from different parts of Africa that I cover in my book, like the Vai people of Liberia and their writing system. These are old books printed in Vai. And this is a gift I got from a Vai person in Liberia. It's a Vai library. Vai Bible, to show that the writing system is still alive and well and used today. Basava alphabet, Mende, Ethiopic, or Giz, as it is better known. Now these are the these brothers here, the Berry brothers. They invented the writing system in the 80s called Adlam, and it became so popular and was used by millions of people who speak the Fulani language. But the government didn't really like this, and they threw one of them in jail. And when he was released from prison, he emigrated to Portland, Oregon. And this is where they are now. You can see the rain there. Portland is just like Seattle. It rains all the time. And these are other African writing systems, Wolof. And this one is called Gari alphabet. But this is the one that blows my mind the most. It's called Mandombe. Was devised in 1978 by David Pai from the Congo and officially introduced to the public in 1994. It is used to write the national languages of the Congo, Kikongo, Lingala, Chiluba, and Swahili, and is read right to left. Nothing could be more. I just love the rhythm, you know, of this writing system. So it's a living script. Giz is one of the oldest African writing systems used in Ethiopia, and everything in Ethiopia has the Roman alphabet and then the Giz part, like their airport here, the international airport, Addis Ababa. And fractals, this is, well, I would like you to take a note and to look for this book by Ron Eglash called African Fractals. African fractals are used in computing and in mathematics. Missing scripts project. So these guys, it's French people, German scholars, and Berkeley, USA. So basically, they go around looking and recording all the writing systems of the world, and they've discovered 293 of them, and then they make them Unicode compliant so that they can be used on computers. And these are the ones that they discovered from Africa. Then Jamra Patel, they went one step further. They actually created or designed a typeface for Africa. It's called Kigelia. And it is Adlam, Giz, Nko, Osmania, Tifina, and Vi. And it has been licensed by Microsoft. And so the next Windows software, this Kigelia script typeface will come bundled, and you can write in any of those writing systems, which I think is really great. Now I'm going to show off my students and what they have done, starting with Nancy. She's now a professor at VCU in Virginia. My son Simba was always interested in architecture, and from ZIVA he went to grad school, actually in the SUNY system at Delhi. That's where he got his degree in architecture and is now a successful architect in Seattle. Christina, interesting. Her parents came from Serbia and they lived in Zimbabwe. And she went, after ZIVA, she went to the famous film school in Cuba. And now she's an award-winning editor, film editor living in New York. Claire Dongo is now a PhD student in South Africa, learning digital arts, studying digital arts. And Roderick, okay, I told you to remember that photo. He was the first student. So this is what 20 years looks like, okay? It's now in a very successful UX designer in South Africa. Simon Charwe is not my student, but he's one of those that were designers, young African designers that were inspired by my work. He uses Adinkra symbols to create uniquely Ghanaian identity programs. Osman Chuma has a studio in South Africa, but he's from Zimbabwe, and uses the Bantu symbol writing and the house painting to also create uniquely South African corporate identity programs. And he did this for the 60th anniversary of Nigerian independence. If you can compare to the one that the government of Nigeria came up with, and this is because 60 is the diamond, anniversary. That's what we fight against, and it's sometimes it's a losing battle because they would rather do this than that. The fight for our workers, designers. These guys are from Ghana. They are fashion designers, very successful in New York. Donatella, she's from Trinidad. I helped her with her thesis, MFA thesis. And so she uses material from Afrikan Alphabets to create her work. And Amina, I taught Amina in Seattle. And now this one here, it's a personal thing that I thought I should share. Like this album came out in 1978 or 77. Bob Marley and the Wailers and Exodus. And I was fascinated by the title, the typography for the title. And it's only after I became a designer and also a student of World Scripts that I found out that this was Giz. But what the designer, Neville Garrick, who's there, did was he took symbols, and some of them turned upside down on their side to spell out Exodus. And this album, just so you know, if you are into trivia, was named the album of the century by Time magazine. And so when I was living in the US, of course, I made the pilgrimage. It's like if you're a Rasta or if you love reggae, you have to make the pilgrimage to Jamaica. So I went there and I met Neville Garrick at the Bob Marley Museum. And then another designer that I didn't meet, but whose work is quite iconic, is Lemi Gariaku, who was the art director for Fela. Some of you might know Fela. If you don't know Fela, well, you gotta find out who Fela is and get to know Fela. So Fela is kind of like the African Bob Marley, basically, if you're into kind of comparisons. And then in Zimbabwe, our own Bob Marley freedom fighter, his name is Thomas Mafumo, and I designed the cover for this album called Corruption. And you will notice, of course, my Western education. This is a nod to Matisse, basically, of all those artists from that era. Matisse was my favorite. I loved how the paper cuttings, and this was not Photoshop. This is all paper cuts, you know. God, I'm forgetting what that paper was called. Yeah, anyway. So we end where we began, with a shot of my students, ZIVA students. Thank you very much.
Let's give a hand to Saki Mafundikwa. Hey, people are unmuting. Go ahead, unmute. There are those little hand icons too, which whenever I look for them, I cannot find them in time. I'm like, that was great. What questions do we have for Professor Mafundikwa? You can put them in the chat, or how should we do this, Amy? Put them in the chat, or do you want to? I'll try to monitor this. So go ahead.
I'm helping. I can look in the chat.
Great, Sean. Go ahead. You want to cover the chat? Great. Okay. So I think we can do hands. Is that it? How do we do this? Oh, well, just speak. We'll be informal. Anyone have a question?
I do. I was gonna ask, do you tend to use more like digital techniques? Do you use more Photoshop, or because like the last one for the corruptions, you said it was like done by like paper cut. Do you use like one technique more than the other, or do you kind of use them equally?
Well, I'm like, so I saw the light on the way to where was it going again? That story, that biblical story, Damascus. Anyway, so he saw the light, and scales fell out of his eyes, right? And there was he repented. So when I moved back home to start the school, I was totally about the computer is a tool. The computer cannot create yada yada. So you don't touch the computer. First, I want to see a sketch, and then before you can show me the final thing. But I have since changed my mind, because you guys are digital babies, and to deny you your tools, right, which is the computer, would be akin to denying you the air that you breathe. Okay. So now, to me, it doesn't really matter. I don't care how you produce it. I'm not going to tell you, don't touch the computer, don't do it on the computer, do it by hand. You know, that is like archaic thinking. We have, the digital tools have taken over. our lives, our crafts. People now create digital art that sells for millions of dollars. Used to be Picasso's, and then of course, when Basquiat became big, right? He sold a piece of art for $113 million, right? Yet when he was alive, his work was sort of like really not considered art. They considered it graffiti, okay? So things change, and we must change along with them. If you create fierce art in Photoshop, hey, more power to you, you know? So I think that's how I did that. That was 1988, by the way, when I did the Corruption album, okay? So 1998, 88, and 2021, it will be ridiculous really for me to say, don't touch the computer. The choice is yours. The tools are there. If you are adept at the tools, use them.
Very good. Brianna has one. Brianna Cecilia Fugoni asks, is typography your favorite type of design?
Yes, totally. I mean, there's no doubt. I don't even like Leah, yeah. I see Leah Rico from my days in New York. Yeah, absolutely. Typography and how that came about. I can just tell a little story very quickly, and that is that when I was little, right, my father was a teacher, and so there were books in the house, a lot of books, and I would look at these books, and I saw the type, the printed word, and I thought that was done by hand, and I just thought I wanna draw letters that are as good as the ones I see in my father's books. So when other kids were doodling little cartoons and things, I was doodling letter forms. I grew up doodling letter forms. Even up to now, if I'm on the phone and I'm not really engaged with the caller, I just start doodling, and my doodles are always letter forms. So yeah, it's only when I came to America that I discovered that these things are called typography, and they are printed, they are printing machines and all that stuff, you know. But that's really, those are the roots of why I love typography.
Right. Any other questions for Professor Mafundikwa?
I think that some are posting in the charts
I'm
actually.
looking. Rachel, who is your favorite American designer? Rachel from Rachel Kolb.
Oh boy, who's my favorite American designer? That's a good question. I would say, today I would say Jean-Michel Basquiat. And I know you might say, but he's not a designer. Oh yes, he was a designer. He was an absolute designer. And when I go into his work now, okay, and I look at his work, there's a lot of Africa in there. He knew about Nsibidi, you know. And it's just like, I wish I could design like Basquiat. Maybe when I grow up, I will become like Basquiat.
All right. From Cora Horner, we have the question, what is a technique that you show your students to help them look back to their roots and heritage?
Technique. Well, actually, I think I call it connecting the dots. Okay, because like for instance, when I show the Lukasa board, right? When they see it, they just see an artifact. And when I see it, I see a tablet. I'm like, oh my God, Africa actually could have given the world the tablet. But because we don't think that way, we think, this is primitive, this is, those old people. But it is those quote unquote primitive people that I look to. They are the ones that I really hold up, okay? And that they are the ones I learn from. And so I want my students basically to see the artistry, the design in those so-called artifacts, the so-called primitive art. It's not so primitive. If it was so primitive, would it have inspired people like Picasso, right? Unless they were just on a binge of theft, stealing everything they saw, just like stole, stole, stole. But they were inspired. And I think Picasso is on record as really just like saying that in terms of abstraction, nobody beats the African. When you look at African sculpture, how they can show you profile and also this, well, maybe I use terms, but like I'll use layman terms. When they can show you this view and also the side view in one piece of art, which Picasso, of course, took. If you think about Mademoiselle's Avignon, okay, something like that. You know the painting, right? That came straight from African sculpture. So it is that way of looking that I try my students to get to understand and to appreciate.
I think one of the great things about the memory board to me is its memory through touch. As one remembers, one touches the beads and there are patterns and journeys through the beads. So isn't our memory also related to touch and the things we craft with our hands? I know growing up, that's how my family lore was taught to me as my grandmother worked. Isn't that wonderful? It's a very non-Western thing, kind of, right?
Well, my mother was a crocheter. She was constantly crocheting. When she wasn't working and she was just like talking, telling stories, she was crocheting. And now when I look at crocheting and I look at computing, right? You talk about a wireframe. If you are into animation, you create a wireframe first. How different is that from the craft? My mother could have been a computer whiz in terms of coding and all that, because there's a lot of math that goes into crocheting. And it's not like they stop to think about it to say, okay, I'm going to, it's just like this. So it's like when I think of my mother and how I became a designer, it's like I learned design by osmosis. No one told me that this was design, but I was just absorbing. And also I was a part of it, because my mother would then say, look, I want to embroider this. You draw a flower for me. You draw a village scene for me. And I would draw it and then she would embroider. So I was designing before I knew what design was. And my father was a carpenter, and he would always go with me to his shop. And he never taught me how to make furniture. And I regret that, but I think I was too small. And he thought I would saw my hand off or something. But what I did was I finished. He'll give me the sandpaper and say, finish it. And I would finish it and proudly, stand there and say, I'm done. And he'll say, no, you're not. You missed a spot there. He would look at it like this and say, you missed a spot there. And when I tilted my head, for sure I had missed a spot. So he taught me how to see. As a designer, we are anal about detail, attention to detail. If you have no attention to detail, you have no business in design. You know that. And we're the type of people who say, because a typeface is just half a point too big, it bothers you. You go home to sleep, and the next morning you come back and change it because it bothers you. You say, it's not right. But if the people, just people, look at it, they don't see anything wrong with it or about it. That's why we're called designers. We are the experts. We have a special gift that everybody else doesn't see. We see. We are trained to see. Beauty, aesthetics. Do you know what Paul Rand said to me when I went to him to sort of like, go to the stage because I'm thinking of going back home to start a school? And he said to me, just teach them aesthetics. Teach them aesthetics. Teach them to appreciate and to make beautiful things. I'd never looked at design that way until he told me that. And when you look at his work, my God, of course it came naturally to him. He was God. Paul Rand was God, right? And his process came to him very, very, very easily. It's not all of us who are like that. Some of us have to struggle and to work, and until we get it, though, we do get it, right?
I love that
Ultimately.
you make the analogy between crocheting and weaving and the things that we do with our hands in the digital world, because we very seldom think of them that way. Like, all you touch is the keyboard, or all you touch is the mouse or the digital pen. How could that be tactile? How could that be a craftsmanship in the object sense of the word? But you make that analogy. How can we continue to allow people to see how imbricated these things are?
Well, I mean, these things are around us, There's things that are called craft, right? And that's it. And that's the gripe I have with the Western world. How certain things are sort of like demoted from this high sort of like level, right? And termed craft, folk art, right? Which is why I love the work of Thibaut Coleman, M & Company, right? I just love his work. And there are other typographers, I can't think of them now, but people from the, what's that school in Michigan? Cranbrook.
Cranbrook, yeah.
Yeah, the Cranbrook School, okay? They deconstructed everything. The Swiss were like, oh my God, everything was so precious, Dainty, universe, sans serif typeface, white space, and then Cranbrook was grunge. It was dissonance and everything. They just tore everything apart. But there was a beauty to that as well. And people like Thibaut, they saw the beauty in what they call this typography, like that you find at the fair, you know, in the countryside, hand lettered stuff and things like that. It is that ability to see the beauty in that that takes us to that space that you are asking about.
Well, we have room. Well, we're a little over time, but I'm with you. We have a question from Fabrice Toussaint. Do you have a method that you teach your students to confront common challenges in design? One method, right? Or perhaps one to answer Toussaint. Fabrice.
Ask me that question again.
Do you have a method that you can teach your students to confront common challenges in design?
Common challenges. Like what? Tell me one common challenge.
Excuse me. Yes. Like I would say, if you're reaching a roadblock when it comes to, like, for example, in typography, how you were working with nature. Is there a specific type of way you go about it that you just think about and you just kind of say, how do I start, the process when you're just stuck, something like that.
Okay, well, I mean, it's like that project in particular, since you mentioned that project, all I do is just like tell them I say, there's a lot of beauty in nature, right? So just take from nature. And because they are open now that there is beauty in nature, my mind is just blown at what they come up with, you know. And also the thing is, you have to decide, you have to pick one thing that you like, okay? Once you pick that one thing, and then that becomes the basis, you build on that. You cannot not have a thing. You have to pick something, a theme, right? Or a thing that you like. As you saw in the images, some picked birds, the other one that you saw of humans and everything, that was like drunkenness. Someone picked the theme of drunkenness. And I like that. You know, that's the thing he liked. And so you have to find the thing that you like. You cannot not have a thing. You can't sit there and struggle and say, how do I design an alphabet inspired by nature if you are unable to find that thing for whatever reason? It might be a beautiful thing, a bird. You saw because the bird is so graceful. It then becomes easier for you because it's something you actually have decided on, this thing, that the bird is beautiful. And so it's easy to create.
Well, in conclusion, I would like to ask a question. How do we encourage our Black and Brown students, and also women, in the fields of design? When we look at history, we're so underrepresented. Often we look at history for inspiration. Oh, these people have gone before me. And that gives us courage. But when we don't see ourselves in that lineup, or see so few of us, how do we find the courage and the inspiration to go forth in that risky business where we're underrepresented?
Well, I mean, take my example, okay? So I'd never heard of Afrikan Alphabets until Alvin Eisenman, during an interview, asked me that question. I had the awareness. That's the thing. You have to have awareness, because sometimes inspiration can be staring you in the face, full on, but you don't have the awareness to see that, oh my God, this is a moment and I must seize the moment. There is so much history associated or from Africa and other parts of the world, what they call the developing world. There's so much history there. There's so much design. The thing is, you just have to make the effort, though, to see the design in there, the beauty in the things, right? The women of the world, I mean, I'm talking about my mother with the crocheting, right? If you go to Southeast Asia, there are some beautiful textiles that are created over there. Filipino traditional textiles. If you don't see the beauty in those types of things, and that's where you're from, you will always be victim. Always. You always feel like, well, we don't have anything. Africa, you saw the writing systems. And it's not just Africa. I'm talking about the rest of the world. What is true for Africa is also true for Southeast Asia, Latin America, South America, Central America, everywhere. I only speak about Africa because that's where I'm from. And so I know Africa. That's why I talk about Africa. But really, in this group, okay, for instance, Fabrice Toussaint, you're from Haiti, right?
Yes, sir.
Of course,
Yes,
how did I know that? Toussaint, you have the name of a hero. Toussaint, if you people don't know, you others, this man here carries this heavy, heavy name, Louverture Toussaint. He is the one who fought colonization and won. So, Fabrice, when you walk the halls of Russell Sage, you are a king. Do not hold your head down, right? And let everybody know that. Don't feel like, oh, well, I'm only from Haiti and we're known for poverty. We're not, F that. Own
You're
your
right, sir.
greatness. Own your greatness, Fabrice. You hear me?
I hear you. Thank you. That is really inspiring. Thank you so much.
Jean-Michel Basquiat, Haiti. He is the greatest American painter. Now everybody accepts it. When he was alive, oh, he was just a graffiti painter. Do you see how history works? Create your heroes, man. Don't read about your heroes in books. What the mainstream culture wants you to know. Those are your heroes, and that's your inspiration. And believe in that. And hold your head up. Be like Saki Mafundikwa. You know, here I am. I created what I created out of a moment when Alvin Eisenman asked me the question, is your language written? That's where all this came from. That's how I became Saki Mafundikwa, TED speaker, founder of a design school in Africa. Do you hear what I'm saying?
Yes.
If I can reach you, Fabrice Toussaint, specifically in this lecture tonight on March 17, 2021, I feel like I've done my work. And I want to reach you. And don't let me down. I want to see your work. I'm going to follow you.
Thank you so much. Oh my God. Your words are very powerful, but it's not just your words, it's your actions too that will inspire people as well. So thank you so much.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much, Saki Mafundikwa. It's been a delight. It's been really kind of unprecedented for us to have this connection thanks to Zoom. You know, God bless Zoom.
I know.
That we
I know. Can you believe it? And this came out of this, and this came out of this ugly, ugly thing called COVID, right?
We are able to come together. It has been a delight and a treat.
Oh my God!
You
know, I get emotional when I actually think about it. You know, there is no way I could have interacted with you during this pandemic without Zoom.
And we're so honored to have you. Truly, I have followed this man's work for 15 years, I think. So I am thrilled, and I think we all are. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And Leah, let's stay in touch more. You know, it's been a while.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's been a while. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And this concludes our talk.
Okay.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye-bye.
You, everybody, audience. Sean, Amy, everyone.
Bye.
And Barbara, too. Thank you for your help in spreading the word. Barbara Cockfield is our Director of Diversity.